ladies and gentlemen, Andrew and Zach. They are Andrew McMahon in the wilderness.
All right. How's everybody doing? Thanks for coming out. Start jamming? All right. Clark, what you thinking? We should, let's start big. Let's do Cecilia and the Satellite, maybe?
Sounds lovely.
All right. How does that go again? It's nice to see you all. Thanks for coming out. You get to skip work today, or what day of the week is it tonight? Welcome to my life. I do it every night on stage. I'm like, you guys having a good Wednesday? Like, it's Thursday. It's just, it seems to be the thing. It isn't, what is it? It's Roadie Friday for us today. We call it Roadie Friday,
Yes,
and the
indeed.
next day is a day off. So we're going to celebrate tonight. Because tomorrow's Saturday. That was fun like that. This is the first, I've done it once at a radio station by myself, but Zach joined me today, and I like that version.
I liked it as well. I didn't hear the solo version, but
There just wasn't as much heart, because you weren't here with us, Zach.
now there's two hearts.
And they beat as one. Wasn't that a pop song, Neil? Two hearts,
Yeah.
just one mind. Little Phil Collins, right? Oh God, I love Phil Collins. Right?
Might as
Till
well
the
have been.
wasn't it? I think it was Phil
He had
Collins.
He had something to do with it.
Somebody's got a phone that can confirm this for us before the session's over. Wonderful job. I know it's not a comfortable thing to do with the lights on, I told you. As creepy as it sounded. But we appreciate you joining in. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
This is Mr. Zach Clark on the keys here. How you doing, James?
Doing well. Just going to do a quick interview. By the way, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask now. This is your chance. You're inches away.
It's your time to shine, as we've proven with our last rendition of Fire Escape.
How did you write? Well,
Well, it's a device used in popular music.
It's a lot of market research.
Well, it's a drinking song, as you can probably tell by the lyrics, or maybe not. So there was a lot of owing going on in the course of that evening, I would say. But yeah, that's about it. It just sounded good.
It does. So where were you when you first discovered that this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life?
I was in my living room in La Cañada, California. We lived in this kind of creepy, almost like castle in a ravine kind of vibe. Now when I say castle, it wasn't really a castle, but it looked like, it was like the most condensed version of something that could look like a castle. It was this weird little, I don't know, it was very medieval looking. And we lived in this ravine, and that's the first place, I looked out from this big window into this sort of, wooded area that had a big drop off, and I had recently discovered a few chords on the piano, and that kind of coincided with, I lost my uncle, had passed away, and it really affected me. I was like 9 years old, and Buddy's dad taught me how to play a whole lot of shaking going on the piano, and I sort of in a moment found the piano at my house and took those chords and started moving them around and wrote like my first song. And it was a very vivid memory. Like I remember everything about it, and it sort of unlocked this thing in me where I was like, oh, this is how I'm going to process the world, is through song, and that was the moment.
What was the first song you wrote?
It was a song from my uncle. It was called Believe, and it was a 9-year-old kid writing his first song. But there was like some weird depth and energy to it where it felt like it was more than that, and so I just kind of never stopped.
Now, how long did it take for you to write that first song?
Maybe an hour or something. It was just kind of, I think why it felt so good was because it was just this almost channeling sort of stream of consciousness kind of thing. It wasn't like a thing that I was working at as much as it was just like it appeared, and yeah, I think that's how I knew.
And then the passion appeared.
It was all there.
There you are.
One moment, yeah.
What was your first time on stage?
Well, that would probably also be in 4th grade with my band Freedom.
America
Yeah. We,
This is the first time hearing this.
there's a lot being unlocked about my history in this. Oh, you want me to flow with that? Yeah. Well, so myself and Rick Curtis, whose dad was the one that taught me the chords on the piano, and my fourth grade girlfriend, Beth Adamak, I think was her name. We formed a band, as you do. I was really into Bon Jovi, so I had like jeans with holes in them, but I had like a bandana tied around the leg somewhere in there. I think Rick actually wore a bandana around his head, and we performed another one of my hits from that era called "Get the Guitars Rolling." Yeah. I was 9, guys. I mean, cut me some slack.
That's awesome.
It was at the talent show. We did score a gig at the local fair after that, which was pretty cool as well.
Well, Zach's giving you a look. What was your first band?
I was gonna say that's great that you were doing your originals that early. I was only doing covers in 4th grade. But I'll tell you, I'll match you in potential embarrassment. I think I can beat you, actually.
Let's do it. Well, anything.
My first public performance was at an assembly at school in 3rd grade or 4th grade, and I sang along to a Richard Marx cassette tape that broke halfway through.
You didn't even have the TV track. You just sang to the stuff. You just sang to the
No, man, it was a wonder I got a tape in northern Vermont of anything that had been released in the last 20 years. It was a single from like 10 years prior, and I was like, this is the new Richard Marx. Everyone else was like, yeah, it is.
Wherever you go. Is that the one?
It was Hazard.
I don't know that one.
It's a great song.
Richard Marx B-side.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a huge hit, my friend.
Well, we're unearthing a lot in this interview. Yeah.
When was the first time on stage where maybe you didn't know that this many people were going to show up, maybe sing along, and it kind of, maybe that passion hit you again and kept you moving forward?
I mean, for me, it wasn't so much that people were singing along, because it was early in the sort of playing out with the band, but the sort of first incarnation of something corporate was started in, I guess, my sophomore year of high school. We just basically formed to do a battle of the bands, and I made my, our choir teacher, who was awesome, let me use his roll his grand piano out into the middle of they called it the mall. It's like kind of where everybody ate lunch at school. It was this like very sort of centralized area where they could fit all 2,000 or 3,000 people from the school in this one area, and that's where they hosted the Battle of the Bands. And I remember going on stage with those guys, and we did a few originals, and then we covered like Pipeline, and we did like a surf cover, and I'm from the beach, so but I remember that thing just like it just became electric. I was sort of like just blacked out and started running around the school, which was not my MO at that point. Like I was definitely like a wallflower. And that was it. It was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It felt incredible.
There was a time where something corporate, that name, became kind of a household name for a certain age group.
Yeah.
Everybody knew something corporate. Do you remember that time? Was it maybe around when you heard yourself on the radio? When were you and where were you?
I remember the first time I heard the song on the radio, and it was hysterical because we hadn't even finished the album. And a station in LA picked up If You See Jordan, which was also not something I wanted to have happen. Really, you're never gonna get mad when somebody plays your song on the radio. Yeah. But we had put that song out on an EP, thinking oh, cool, we'll burn this one, yeah, and do some other songs for the full length. And I remember driving to the studio in my '89 Corolla. And going to work on the new on the full length record, and hearing the song on the radio on my way there, and I it was very that thing you do. I pulled up to the space where we were working, and I was like, everybody, and I cranked up the car radio, you know what I mean? Get out here, are you hearing this? But truthfully, we were touring. We toured and recorded through that entire time. There wasn't a moment where we came up for air long enough to be like, oh, this has happened, and it was over before that moment even took place, which was bittersweet in a sense. But yeah, I mean, obviously you go to shows and see 3,000 or 4,000 people show up, and you're like, this is getting pretty cool, you know. But I don't think there was ever like the oh, we've arrived moment, you know. We're just working.
What's been, you know, you've been through Freedom, Something Corporate, Jack's Mannequin,
Yep.
Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. You've seen millions of people. You've been in front of a total of millions, if not more, throughout the world. You got to get tired. How do you keep going?
Ask me that in about 6 weeks.
Okay.
No, I mean, look, I've always had a pretty weird, you know, energy source. Like, you know, I can get by without too much sleep, and which is good now, considering that I have a 4-year-old who makes that even harder to get sleep. But I mean, I think you just have to know when to take a break. Usually, you know a little bit too late, but you know, you have to sort of do your best to take care of yourself, especially out here. I mean, we're doing like a 3-hour show right now, and all of us are like, oh wow, we actually have to like sleep 12 hours if we're gonna sing tonight, you know. But I think having a family now has sort of put a finer point on the necessity of taking breaks, because you know, more than anything, I need to just make time to be with them.
Yeah.
And that becomes really my break, if that makes sense.
Do you have a place in particular you like to take a break? You don't have to be like specific.
No. There's a bar down the street, actually. Home. I mean, honestly, we took over this like historic little California bungalow 6 or 7 years ago, and then just sort of redid it so that it felt a lot like a kind of cozy hotel room.
Yeah.
and so home is really like where I go to relax. I live in an awesome town. We live close to the beach, like y'all, and that is really where I find my kind of peace and quiet.
How did you and Zach hook up?
Man, Zach was coming to shows. He was you know, making his own music, and he'd come out to shows and bring us, you know, big growlers of Vermont beer and demo tapes, and he kind of we became sort of fast road friends in a sense. Every time we came to his part of the country, Zach would come out. We all hang out, and he'd keep us up to date with the music he was making, and I mean, eventually I needed a keyboard player, and I was like the first person that came to mind. I was like, there's that kid with the beer and the great demos. And so I called Zach and I said, you know, well, first I thought maybe he played guitar. I was looking for somebody who could do both. I call and go, hey, can you play like guitar and keys? He's like, I'm not much of a guitarist. I was like, oh, that's a bummer, because I really need somebody who can do both. But you know, let me know, you know, maybe down the line or whatever. He calls me back like an hour later. He says, look, I've got a guitar player. We're both coming. We'll come for free. You know, like, and so I said yes.
The deal of a lifetime.
Yeah. And you know, we started before the Wilderness Project really was like, we got thrown together because Fun needed like an opener, and asked me, because I've been friends with those guys forever and given them a lot of gigs with Jax and stuff, and then, you know, that whole band, Zach was like, you know, other than our guitar player and our bass player, Zach was the guy who stayed, and we went on to sort of do all this Wilderness stuff together. Sorry, I didn't mean to tell your story there, Clark. Maybe you have a different version.
That was more or less it. My favorite part from my angle was that when you called me, that first phone call, I was standing on my now ex-girlfriend's front porch, locked out in the rain. Hey Zach, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm locked outside my ex-girlfriend's, or I'm locked outside my girlfriend's house in the rain. You're like, well, no, like, what are you doing? Like,
Like more in the future.
once you get into the house.
But yeah, I mean, Zach actually has just finished one of the coolest records I've heard in a long time. So if you get a chance, check out Zach Clark. Was it like, how do you check out your music, Zach?
Spotify.
Yeah.
The internet. Wherever you find all of your music, it's there.
Yeah, he's got a couple of songs from the record that are out now, but it's incredible. And he's doing tour dates. And are you coming down this way in the
I don't
summer?
believe we're getting into Florida on this run.
Soon.
but soon.
Yeah.
Just search Zach Clark.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, you'll find me.
Well,
And a football player from Oregon.
His music is a little bit different. I'll talk about
It is, yes.
I think my other Andrew McMahon is like is a scientist or something. And it's me. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you guys are on stage tonight at the beach. I really appreciate you coming by and doing this.
Our pleasure. You guys are awesome. Thank you.